Now, joining us to discuss what to watch tonight are Stuart Rothenberg of the Rothenberg Political Report, who's also a contributing columnist at Roll Call, and NewsHour political editor Christina Bellantoni, who starts with us this week. Not a moment too soon, Christina. What are you watching for tonight?
Well, I'm really looking to see if the Iowa Republicans are as split among their sort of core as we thought that they might be. You know, you've got a situation where, as you know, Judy talked about, and obviously as Ann just talked about, you know, where they're looking for electability. But then there's the anti-war faction that, you know, tends to sign with Congressman Ron Paul. You've also got the evangelical vote, which has been splitting, but seemed to be going with former Senator Rick Santorum at this last, you know, sort of push at the end. And then there's sort of the voters that are going based on their, you know, the economy. They think that maybe Romney would be the best steward of the economy, better than Barack Obama. So that's where I'm looking. Are they really split, or, you know, is Romney really going to be able to make that case to all of these groups?
How about you, Stu?
Same kind of thing. So one, I'm looking to see whether the second-tier conservatives are simply collapsing.
What does that mean, second-tier conservatives?
That would be, not to offend anybody, but that would include...
Why would tonight be any different?
That would include Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, and Michelle Bachmann. Is support leaving them and going to presumably Rick Santorum? If that happens, if it happens in big enough numbers, Santorum could not merely surge, but he could surge to the front. That would be a significant development, at least for him, if not long-term. The other thing I'm looking at is this question on electability that Christina mentioned. I looked at the exit polls 4 years ago, and they asked a question: what's the most important candidate quality to you? And electability was cited by 7%. Only 7% of Republicans. And you know who won those Republicans? 51% of them went for Mitt Romney. Now, flash forward 4 years later, what percent of Republicans in Iowa who go to these caucuses say that electability is the number one thing? A lot of us think it's going to be bigger than 7%. How big is it, and does Mitt Romney continue to get those people?
Does he benefit in those cases? That's interesting. Well, let's look at a map of Iowa in our heads here and say geographically, which areas, if we begin to watch some of these results come in tonight, which areas are you watching to see which way they go?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, sort of the central part of the state is really crucial for Mitt Romney, especially because Mike Huckabee, the former Arkansas governor, was basically able to take all of that in 2008 and win the caucuses. And Romney won, you know, some areas in the Northeast and then some areas in the West, you know, sort of the Central West. And Ron Paul won just one county in 2008. So I'm looking at some of those towns, you sort of just see, you know, in that central Iowa area, if Romney's able to capture, you know, say Des Moines, that's going to be a pretty good indicator of where this night may go.
How about you, Stu?
And Romney's strength, as Christina said, one of his greatest areas of strength was the Catholic eastern third of the state. Rick Santorum, a Catholic, conservative, pro-lifer. The question is, does he eat into Romney's margin, Romney's vote in that area? I think that's going to be telling. And then there's the general question whether or not Mitt Romney generally broadens his support because of the electability argument, and because, let's face it, Gwen, he has been pounding away for months on what a conservative he is. It's not as if Mitt Romney's been running as a moderate, saying, look at me, I'm a moderate. He's been saying, I'm a conservative. So does he increase his margins even in the central part of the state among conservatives?
Well, let's talk culturally, because you mentioned the Catholics and you mentioned the fact that the evangelicals, we've been talking about them till we're blue in the face, in part because of the way it happened 4 years ago with Mike Huckabee. Is that a significant chunk this year, or are they so hopelessly split that they're not going to have that kind of ability to deliver?
I mean, they've been really campaigned to this year, from Mike Huckabee going to the state and showing, you know, his movies, from, you know, the Tea Party coming through and trying to galvanize that group as well.
I heard today Ralph Reed was their campaign, or at least appearing with Rick Santorum.
Yeah, and I think that they're definitely getting a lot of attention this year. They're being told how important they are, so they tend to show up in big numbers.
Well, I think they're going to show up, and again, as this question is, are they going to splinter, as they have been for months, or have they suddenly, at the last moment, maybe because of divine intervention, concluded that they have to support a single candidate, and that's presumably Rick Santorum? That is a very important question. I don't think we can answer that now.
We'll answer it later. Now, here's one of the other questions which I'm curious about, because people forget that 4 years ago, a lot of Republicans crossed in caucus for Barack Obama, and that helped him come from behind and beat Hillary Clinton in Iowa. Where are those voters now? Is anybody talking to them?
Yeah, I talked to the Obama campaign earlier this evening, and they are not publicly talking about sort of what their strategy is. They don't want to communicate that to the Republicans, they say. But they say that their real strength is sort of turning out more people, and by turning out more people, they mean turning out more hardcore Democrats. So
You mean for the caucuses tonight, even though there's not a competition?
Exactly, and just getting people engaged. They're doing a lot of this, I've delivered on my 4 promises that I made when I won that speech. That's what you're going to hear Obama talk about quite a bit. But they're not talking about those Republicans. So it would appear that perhaps they're not counting on those people returning to him come the fall 2008. I think they're caucusing for others.
It seems like President Obama, if nothing else, is a great motivating factor for Republicans. They want to get him out of there.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a lot of Democrats coming out and re-registering Republican just to vote in the Republican caucuses, but I would keep an eye on independents. 4 years ago, 13% of people participating in the Republican caucuses were independents. Ron Paul got 29%, John McCain got 23%, and Mitt Romney got 19%. Does the independent number go up or down? Does Ron Paul benefit? A lot of interesting questions.
Now, here's a question that's asked at this time every 4 years in every other state of the union, which is, why Iowa? Why is it so important? So few delegates. It seems so unrepresentative. Why?
Well, and this is a really great question, I think, for this year, because you've seen the candidates actually spent less time in Iowa than ever before. You know, Iowans like to say they like to meet every single candidate multiple times. They're really kicking the tires, as they like to say. But if they're going to reward the candidates who didn't spend a lot of time in Iowa, didn't necessarily spend a lot much money in Iowa until the end, that's really going to call into question just
that would be Mitt Romney, you're saying.
Well, not just Romney. A lot of the candidates, Gingrich didn't really start campaigning there until the final, last month and a half. So I think that it definitely is a big question there. And one other thing I will point out is that Romney won about 25% of the vote to come in second in the caucuses in 2008. And I think that that's going to be, an interesting look of what percentage he might get tonight. Is he breaking that floor? Can he win with that low percentage?
Is Iowa mostly good for its launching pad potential?
Absolutely. You're right. The numbers don't justify it. 25 delegates out of about 2,300 at the Republican convention. And, Gwen, not a single delegate will be selected tonight. That will be further down the road. Why then? Do we care? I think first, finally, real people are actually going to participate in the process rather than pollsters and pundits. And so that's important. Real people are involved. And second of all, it's a question of momentum. The people who do well here will be able to raise money. They'll get more airtime, more coverage. They'll be able to gin up their campaigns, and that will be good for them down the road.
Timing. Stu Rothenberg, Christina Bellantoni will be talking to you all night. Thank you.
Thanks.